beautiful friends, it's Amanda here. It is finally time for my last best of 2019 video. I'm a little bit sad that it's over, but I'm also excited to completely put 2019 behind and move on to great new products in this year. We have a lot to talk about. Typically for my best palettes of the year, I'll do a top 10. Couldn't do it this year. Couldn't do it. I did a top 20. I know that's a lot. I'm gonna try my best not to talk too much about each specific palette. Let's just start with a little warm up. I do want to mention 4 single shadows. Since I think this video is the best place to talk about those, we might as well just talk about the only not ColourPop option first. This is from Tarte. It's one of their chrome paint pots. It's the shade Wild at Heart. This is such a gorgeous little pigment. These are kind of loose pigments. They come in a little pot like this. This is not a pressed product. And I'm actually wearing this shade on my inner corners today and up onto the lid a little bit. When you see this product all together in the pot, it looks like, okay, a sparkly like peachy pink. I'm gonna swatch it for you. But when you swatch this product, it is insane. It's like this baby pink mint green duochrome. I just think this is so pretty. It's so special, kind of wonderfully out of character for a Tarte product. Look at that second layer. Oh my goodness. It's just stunning. It's simple, but it's still unique and exciting at the same time. I was already a fan of this formula, and this new shade is just so good. No surprise here, the rest are ColourPop, 2 of which are the Jelly Much shadows. I'm a big fan of the Jelly Much formula. I know a lot of people either struggle with it, how to apply it, or these do tend to dry up too. I have a whole video about that, so go check out Jelly Much 101 if you've struggled with Jelly Much shadows. These 2 were some of my absolute favorites. More duochromes. This one from the spring collection, pretty sure this was from the spring collection, is called Late Bloomer. It's an absolutely stunning purple to blue duochrome shade. So that is Late Bloomer. I love purple, but blue really intimidates me. So a purple to blue duochrome shade just does something for me because it's comfortable and adventurous at the same time. So Late Bloomer was one of my favorites. The other Jelly Much I loved this year was from the Bye Birdie collection. This is another one that I'm wearing as part of my eye look today. This is sort of the base, and then I put some other shadows on top. Just a gorgeous pinky cranberry shade. So that one is called On the Fly. My final single shadow favorite is actually one of their pressed singles. I think these were released this fall after the Whatever palette. This peachy orange shade called Turntables is by far my favorite. When I was thinking about what my favorite single shadows were, this was one of the first ones to pop into my mind. This just has such a beautiful gold shift to it. It's one of those shades that you could wear as a part of a neutral look or as part of a colorful look. So these are my 4 favorite single shadows of the year. I think anybody could wear these and enjoy them no matter what your style is, no matter what your skill level is. So Wild at Heart, that's the Tarte one, Late Bloomer, On the Fly, and Turntables. Alright, so I did do swatches of those single shadows. I am not going to be swatching the eyeshadow palettes for a couple reasons. First of all, there's 20 of them, and swatching 20 eyeshadow palettes would basically just ruin my arm. It would really hurt. It would start to get stained. I will start to get irritated from cleaning them off. And second of all, almost every single one of these palettes that I'm going to mention has an entirely dedicated video where I show you finger swatches, brush swatches, tutorials. A lot of them have comparisons. There is a small handful of palettes in my favorites today that I did not do dedicated reviews on, but I almost always talked about them in another video, a favorites video or a haul or something like that. So I'm gonna link all the videos below. If you feel like you wanted more information about a palette or why I liked it or the formula or anything, please check the description box. I promise I will give you as much information as I possibly can down there. All you have to do is click. With that being said, there's 20 palettes. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna run out of camera battery. Let's start with number 20 and work our way up to the top of the list. The first palette I'm going to talk about, this is number 20 on my list. It's from ColourPop and this is the Bare Necessities palette. This is one of their large palettes. This is more of a later in the year release. This is all neutrals, and the reason why this is at number 20 and not any higher is because this is a very basic palette as far as colors go, especially if you go to watch my dedicated video on this palette. In comparison to a lot of other neutral palettes, it's not really offering too much new. I mean, it's what is, first of all, and it's a neutral palette. I chose to put this on the list for a few reasons. First of all, there's no pressed glitters. This is one of the few ColourPop palettes that came out this year without any pressed glitter. Every shade has really consistent quality. This is a great staple, a great basic. Whether you are a working makeup artist, somebody just starting out in the makeup world, I see this being a great staple, a great value. The price for not only the quantity but the quality in this palette is just unbeatable, and I really felt like this deserved to be on the list. Next, let's talk about MAC. This is the only MAC palette that's going to be on my list this year. This one really flew under the radar in my opinion. This is from the Art Library collection. This is the palette called It's Designer. There were some more neutral or more toned down palettes in this collection, but I really felt like this was such a good palette, a great release from MAC. This is interesting, it's useful. If you're not a really colorful, like rainbow palette type of person, then this can look pretty intimidating because there's this row of neons on top. If you take a look at this palette while covering up those neons, this is a very approachable color palette. There's some great sort of grounding shades that really work well with those neon pigments. I really felt that this got overlooked. This is a really fun release, probably the most fun release from MAC this year. They did go very neutral this year, and I felt like this was sort of a bright little rainbow in all of their releases this year, pun intended. But I just thought this was such a cool, cute little release from MAC. Definitely my favorite MAC palette this year. In spot number 18, we have another ColourPop palette. This time it's one of their 9-pan palettes. This is the Strawberry Shake palette. It has a pink, red, purple, mauve-y sort of vibe to it. I think this was one of their better 9-pan releases so far, at least in my opinion. This really strikes a great balance between bright colors, neutrals. There's a lot of mattes in this palette, and these are high-performing mattes in my opinion. For just 9 shades, I can get a lot of different looks out of here. Something super simple, super toned down, or something really bright and bold. I felt like a lot of their 9-pan palettes this year didn't give me very much variation or couldn't give me entire looks. So quite a few of the 9-pans were just sort of okay or fell kind of flat for me, and the Strawberry Shake was not one of those releases. Really cute, really fun. There are some eye safety warnings here, but not for glitter. They're for the red pigments. For more information about that, please check out my video about this palette. This is a really fun little kind of girly moment for me, and I like it. Next up, we have a palette from Juvia's Place. This is the Nubian 3 Coral palette. I've tried quite a few Juvia's Place palettes this year, and I've sort of had a mixed bag quality-wise. A few of the palettes I tried had really, really great pigmentation, and then a few of the palettes that I've tried, I found that they weren't across the board really great performing shadows for me. Some of them would be really opaque and really amazing and smooth and blendable, and then in the same palette, you know, the next shade over, it would be a little dull, a little hard to build up, and I did not have that experience at all with this palette. I found this to be really consistent quality across the board, mattes and shimmers. This is a super interesting color combination to me. It's very neutral and somehow it's still unique. I think this combination of the these peachy shades with the really, really deep browns, the gray. It's neutral, but it's in a way that we don't really see that often. This has a great balance of shades, and I also really like to use this as a companion palette to more colorful palettes, just because it has those sort of offbeat neutrals. This can be a really fun companion palette. All right, in slot number 16, we have a newcomer to the game. This is a brand new brand that popped up in 2019. And I didn't do a dedicated video on this palette, but I did speak about it in an indie palette haul and in a favorites video, so I'll link those for you. I know I did swatch this palette. This is the Remedy eyeshadow palette from Beauty by Stoney. Don't let the very simple packaging fool you. This is such a cool, dynamic palette. This has a really, really great balance between the neutral shades and the colorful shades. This palette is so easy to create looks with. It's such a joy to work with because every single time I swatch these shadows, I am shocked all over again at how insanely beautiful they are. Since I didn't do a dedicated video, I'm just gonna do a little swatcheroo here so that you can see what I mean. This green is so bright, it stays true to color. This plum shade is insanely intense. I mean, I can't even really explain to you without showing you how much payoff there is. These are still super easy to work with, even though the pigmentation is just off the charts. I love everything about this palette. I love the shades, I love the formula, I love that there's a little mirror in here, I love that it has a magnetic closure, I love how affordable this is. I think this is retail priced at like $15. I love supporting a small business, a new business, a female-owned business, a black-owned business. Everything about this palette is good. It's good. I don't even, hashtag not sponsored. I don't work for them. I would in a heartbeat. Remedy palette. Check it out if you're looking for new indies. I really, really hope we see more eyeshadow palettes from her this year because this one's good. It's good. All right, we're going to encounter our first Anastasia palette on this list. This is the Riviera palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills. Another fun little palette that has really bright bold colors mixed in with some really easy neutrals. I think this was a spring, like early summer release for them. It was very fitting for that season. I know that a lot of people were saying they struggled to create looks with this or they felt overwhelmed by it. And I was really a fan of doing a simple 2-shadow look with this palette. I felt like that allowed me to be creative, but I didn't have to spend an hour doing my eyeshadow. I would just grab Coastline and Inheritance or Monte Carlo and Palermo. I just found that it was really fun, really easy, super high quality. I think there was kind of mixed reviews for a lot of Anastasia palettes this year, and just the fact that they released so many, this was sort of the beginning of that rush, and I thought it was a great palette. Did a whole video on it. Go check it out if you want to see swatches. Let's talk about something that I love and I hope you love, and that's mini palettes. This is the Hot Buttered Rum palette from Too Faced. I love this little palette. I know this is a little neutral, tiny little neutral palette, and you know what? That's what it is, and that's why I like it. It's so cute. It smells so good. All of the shades performed exceedingly well for me. Particularly impressed by this little mustardy yellow matte shade. Yellows are pretty tricky. They're usually kind of hit or miss, and this was such a hit for me. Really a cute palette. I hope these are still around. Now that the holidays are over, I know that a lot of these palettes are going to start disappearing quickly. So if you have the ability and you're interested in this, definitely recommend. Such a cutie little palette. I love a cutie little palette, and I love this little palette. Hot Buttered Rum. Oh boy, lucky number 13. It's another ColourPop palette. This was an Ulta exclusive palette. It's the X's and O's. Not sure if this ever made its way over to the ColourPop site. I know they usually do. I did a full review on this, of course. I did some comparison swatches. I said in that video, and I'm gonna say it here again, I probably shouldn't like this, mainly because there are a lot of repeat shades in here, but everything about the way this palette is curated really worked for me. I love the artwork. I think this is some of the most beautiful packaging design that ColourPop did all year. This isn't a palette review, I already did that. Here we are with a neutral palette. I am not ashamed to say I love neutral palettes. I love color palettes. I love half and half palettes. And this was a more neutral palette that I really vibed with this one. I'm not mad at warm neutrals. I love them all the time. We got some great duochromes in here. We got a really beautiful red shimmer in here. What's not to like? I mean, if you don't like neutrals, then there's a lot to not like, but I do, and I really enjoyed this palette. Again, no pressed glitter. That's all I'll say about that. The number 12 spot is another newcomer. This is Solange Makeup. This is not Solange Knowles. This is not Beyonce's sister. This is a Peruvian brand, and the makeup artist who started it is named Solange. This is their Pro Shimmer palette. I love the shimmers in this palette so much. There are 2 mattes down here, which I actually appreciate because I feel like I can really get a complete look just from this palette. Every time I want a quick shimmery lid, this is what I'm going to. You've got your crease shade, you've got your deepening or liner shade, you've got your inner corner shades. Again, a balance of colors and neutrals. Beautiful neutral shades. I love these as all over lid colors. Got some red, purple, blue, green. It's not a rainbow palette. It's not trying to be a rainbow palette. It's just a beautiful collection of perfect shimmer shades. The pigmentation on these, again, is just insane. These are so shiny. They last forever on my lid. This like greenish turquoise shade is my favorite, which is shocking for me because I'm not really a green girl, but just so bright, so metallic, so shimmery. I have to swatch this green one for you. It is insanely beautiful. It's like butter. It's like shimmery turquoise butter, and that's really what I'm looking for. We're nearing the midpoint of the list. At number 11, I have this Lorac palette. This is the Luxe Diamond palette. This became such a travel staple for me. I've said many times in the past, and I will continue to say, the Lorac Pro eyeshadow formula is one of the best. It's so underrated. These shadows are just as good as Anastasia shadows in my opinion. The mattes are creamy and blendable. The shimmers are just bright, one swipe payoff. I particularly love this shade called Extravagant. This is the one that I keep going back to. This was a fall staple shade for me. This is a really rich brown, but it has a reddish undertone. It has that gold reflect. Oh, it's so good, so pretty. I can see this being a staple for a lot of people, whether you are a makeup artist, whether you're just a makeup lover that wants some great go-to neutrals. This pairs well with colorful shadows. It definitely works all on its own. It works for a lot of skin tones. This one flew under the radar for some reason. This just didn't get a lot of hype, and I think it is an exceptionally good palette. And this was Lorac's best palette, in my opinion, of 2019. They don't launch a lot. I think that's part of the reason why people don't talk about them that much, but what they do come out with is good. All right, we're halfway home. Number 10 on the list. This one comes from Dominique Cosmetics. It's the Celestial Storm palette. This is another one that got some mixed reviews. I think a lot of people were expecting super metallics out of these shimmers when a lot of them really are these softer topper shades that are meant to be blended with these really bold mattes. So I can see why that might not be everybody's cup of tea, but I loved how dynamic this palette is. Are you sensing a theme? I like palettes that are half neutral, half colorful. You can stay in this quad over here and get a really basic everyday warm neutral look. You can really spice it up. You can go more cool toned with the grays. I particularly love the purples in this palette. It's no secret, I like purple when I go for color. I am a purple girl. This year was my first time trying Dominique Cosmetics. So glad I did. Really glad that this palette tempted me into ordering. Shade selection, quality, even the packaging, just super beautiful. I do wish this was a little smaller. I feel like it's a lot more gigantic than I expected. But I mean, I can't really complain because I got a lot of product in here. Woo! All right, we're in single digits now. Coming up on another Too Faced palette. At number 9, I have the Gingerbread Extra Spicy palette. I think the community in general was very split on this. A lot of people were saying it was a snooze fest, that it looked just like the other palette. I disagree. I compared them in my video about this, and I actually prefer this palette. I love a warm neutral. I love some cute packaging. I love scented makeup. I know that's not for everyone, but it definitely is for me. Very much enjoyed the color selection in here. It was very easy to put together a look. All of these shades work so cohesively together, but I still found myself getting some really distinctive looks, just depending on if I went more, you know, pinky, mauve-y, orange, or yellow. Not even mad at this blue shade, and I'm not much of a blue girl, but this just hit all the right notes for me. This was one of my favorite holiday palettes, and I liked it. If you don't like it, that's fine, but it's in my top 10, so I obviously like it. Speaking of controversial palettes, let's talk about this Jackie Aina palette from Anastasia Beverly Hills. I didn't get this one very early on in the game, and there were already so many reviews that I just didn't really feel like I could contribute much in that respect, but I really like this palette. ABH shadows have a great reputation. They have that reputation for a reason. These shadows are incredibly pigmented, mattes and shimmers alike. I love the mix of warm neutrals and these really pretty jewel tones. I've liked every single color combo that I've used out of this palette. Particularly love this bright gold shade called Zam and this brown green duochrome called Sponsored. Those were my two love to wear on my lid shades. But honestly, every single color in this palette is something that I'm happy to wear. And I feel like I can take these shadows on the full spectrum of super light, neutral, like quick, easy, everyday type of eye, all the way up to full glam. And that's something that I really like in a palette. This palette gives it to me. This performed well for me regardless of your thoughts or feelings towards the collaborators. This was a beautiful palette. In the number 7 spot, I have the Kaleidos Futurism palettes. My personal favorite is Futurism 3, the Astro Pink palette. However, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to cheat a little bit because I do think all of the Futurism palettes are great. So you can kind of make them interchangeable. I did do a video swatching all the palettes and ranking them. So this one's my favorite. We'll use this as the number 7 placeholder, but you could put any of the Kaleidos Futurism palettes in that spot because the quality is beautiful. The shade selection is unique and interesting. The packaging is beautiful. I don't have one single bad word to say about the Kaleidos palettes. So that's number 7. Astro Pink, but you can fill in the blank. Any of the Futurism palettes. I'm not going to argue with you. Kind of in that same realm of thinking, for number 6, I have the Huda Beauty Nude Obsessions palettes. Nude Medium is my personal favorite. It's the one I've used the most. But again, across the board, great shade selection, really well curated, wonderful formulas. I did do a swatch video on these and then I did a separate tutorial video with them. So cute, worth every penny, something for everyone as far as shade range goes. And that's why they're in the number 6 spot. Okay, top 5, this is it. Whew, okay. In spot number 5, I have the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette. I did not expect to love this palette as much as I ended up loving it. The marketing images did not do justice to these shades. This absolutely is a neutral palette. I mean, the Naked palette series, the whole point is that they're neutral palettes, but like with a twist. The shade selection in here just warms my heart. I like every single eyeshadow in here. The formula is consistently perfect across the board. I would go as far to say as formula-wise, this is the best palette Urban Decay has ever released. I've liked their other palettes. Something about these shadows is just perfect for me. They stay true to color, they blend beautifully. There's a great balance in here, certainly of neutral tones, but sort of this unique twist with these mustardy shades, this bright, bright yellow gold. We have a little olive green moment in here. I love it, start to finish. Totally shocked by this. I did not think I was gonna love it, and I love it. I top 5 love it. Okay, in 4th place, I'm actually going to include a palette that released at the very, very end of 2018. This came out in like mid-December 2018. It did not get its chance to shine in my best of the year that year, just because it was the end of the year. And this has to be included in a best of, because this is one of my favorite ColourPop palettes of all time. This is the Salvaje palette. It's actually in collaboration with Becky G. I think that my camera and ring light is helping me out a little bit here, but this palette's super messy. I love this palette so much. I get a full look out of this palette every time I use it, and I can do something different every time I use it. I always travel with this. I love this palette. I don't even love blue, and I love that there's blue in here. You know I'm a big ColourPop palette fan. If you've watched any of my videos, the ColourPop eyeshadow formula is one of my favorites. That paired with this shade combo that's both easy and interesting and just beautiful packaging. I wish that it would have had its chance to shine in my 2018 favorites, but it's here and it's near the top of the list. So I feel like that's really saying something. And that something is, it's one of my favorite palettes. In spot number 3, I have a NARS palette. This is the Skin Deep palette. I gave this a glowing review when it came out. 100% agree with past me. This is a standout neutral palette, not just of the year, but probably in my entire collection. These are true neutrals. They're not too warm, they're not too cool. This shade range is gonna work for a lot of skin tones. I was actually talking about this palette with one of my friends who's a makeup artist. I'm actually just gonna take this opportunity to shout her out because she's amazing. Her name is Jaleesa Jakaran. She is ridiculously talented. Like, her work is, it's baffling that obviously I'm at a loss for words. She is so talented, and we were talking about this palette, and she says she really loves this for working on models because she can work on every single skin tone. So that just sort of confirmed my initial reaction to this palette, that this is gonna be great across the board, great for makeup artists, great for every skin tone, a really stunning true neutral palette. And you can multitask these powders really well too, because you could contour with them. I've actually used this shade quite a bit to help fill in my brows. I have this one spot on my brow where I have a little scar and a brow pencil won't stick to it, so I use a powder, and I like to use this eyeshadow for that. Absolutely just stunning, a great release from NARS. If you feel like you're lacking true neutral shades, check out the Skin Deep palette. In second place, a palette that is not going to surprise a single soul, especially if you watched my ranking my 9-pan palettes from ColourPop. This is the It's My Pleasure palette. I love this palette so much. This is such a beautiful collection of pinky purpley shadows. I really like this for a lot of the same reasons that I said I like the Strawberry Shake palette. There's a good variety. You can get a lot of looks. You could get a more toned down, more neutral look. You can get a really bright, bold, super glamorous look. Both mattes and shimmers, just spot on formula, particularly the shimmers in this palette. We're getting some great duochromes in here. I love purple eyeshadow. I love duochromes. I love really shimmery looks. This is just hitting all the right notes for me. This is my favorite of the 9-pan palettes of all time, and it is my second favorite palette of 2019. By now, if you're somebody that's watched a lot of my videos, or particularly if you follow me on Instagram, shameless plug, go follow me on Instagram, then you have already, by process of elimination, figured out what's next. It's the Mercury Retrograde palette from Huda Beauty. Oh my gosh. I raved about this in my review of this palette. This is another one where I did 2 videos. One was a swatch and review, and then one was a set of tutorials. I reach for this palette constantly. I can't even explain to you until you feel these powders how soft and perfect this formula is. It's crazy. I don't know how she does it, but I'm glad that she does. You can probably tell how wrecked a bunch of my shadows are because I go hard for this palette. I love that there are so many neutral options here to pair up with this more colorful top row. I did a couple girls' nights over the past few months, and I almost always wore this palette just because I knew that I could rely on it to look great for hours and hours. There's nothing that I don't like about them. The outer packaging is beautiful. The shades are fun. They make me feel inspired. It makes me happy to use them. And I just feel like this was such a standout of the year. Cannot wait to see what Huda releases this year because I am sold on her palettes. So good, so good. Everything about this is good. Oh man, it's so good. It's so beautiful. It's perfect. I love it. Best palette of the year. Now's the time when I want to hear which palettes you guys loved. I know there were so many great palettes. There's no way that I could test them and love them all. So these were my top favorites of the year. I want to know in the comments what your top favorites were. This is the end of the series, but make sure you go check out the previous 3 videos where I cover the rest of my favorites. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your comments. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye. Super awkward, as usual. This actually matches my sweater a little bit. Okay. This is another one. Okay, shocking. Amanda's getting distracted by shiny things. We're like 4 minutes in. What's new? This peachy orange shade called Turd Tables. Wow, nope. Of palette. I've quite that. I tried to say tried and quite at the same time and it came out quite. Now that the holiday season, nailed it. I have eyeshadow all over my hands. Just another day in the life. The beauty community. Dang it. Because all these shades work so cohesively. What does that mean? I agonize about this list way more than I care to admit. I start making my best of lists in like September and then I just rearrange them and reorganize them until now. NARS palettes are impossible to open. Why do they do this to me? This, chef's kiss. And I'm fine. Oh brother, I didn't think we were gonna make it. Here we are, we made it. I worked up a sweat a little bit. Okay, we did it. Now I gotta go edit this, okay? Bye, thank you for watching, bye, I love you so much. I love you so much, bye.